So, fun as it is to rep anarcho-Bidenism, the premier, the front man, every once in a while, you know, we have to put down the hood and the cowl, and we have to dig deep. We have to grind our feet into the dirt, crack our knuckles, and maybe get involved in a bit of criticism. Now, I'm loath to criticize Biden. I know, what with him being a communist, you know, he's our guy, but I feel like he's really slipped up this time. I don't really know how what he's doing right now is advancing the international interests of the proletariat. We'll get to that. An airstrike, first military action in Joe Biden's presidency. Now let's read up just a hot sec. Joe Biden has carried out his first military action as president with airstrikes targeting Iranian-backed fighters in Syria, is what the Pentagon said was retaliation for a rocket attack in Iraq earlier this month that killed one civilian contractor and wounded a U.S. service member and other coalition troops. The overnight strikes killed 22 people after hitting 3 trucks loaded with munitions near the border town of Abu Kamal, a war monitor said on Friday. Border posts used by the Iranian militia groups were also destroyed, the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said. It said all of the dead were from Iraq's state-sponsored Hashd al-Shabi, an umbrella force that includes many small militias with ties to Iran. The Pentagon's chief spokesperson, John Kirby, said the location of the strikes were used by Kataib Hezbollah and Kataib Sayyid al-Shahada, 2 Iraqi pro-Iran groups operating under the Hashd umbrella. This proportionate military response was conducted together with diplomatic measures, including consultation with coalition partners, Kirby said. The operation sends an unambiguous message. President Biden will act to protect American and coalition personnel. At the same time, we have acted in a deliberate manner that aims to de-escalate the overall situation in eastern Syria and Iraq. Okay. So we have some stuff to talk about. Now I'm going to open this by yelling at lefties. Very quickly, we just have to get it out of the way. If you're a lefty and you're saying that this is bombing brown children or whatever, then you need to stop. You are legitimately obfuscating the issue. It was a fairly targeted airstrike against actual military, state-sponsored, militia group. This isn't a civilian target. We have, to my knowledge, there is no evidence that a civilian target was hit, okay? Does that make it good? No. However, let's be clear about it, okay? Because I'll tell you one thing, okay? There is a very big difference between bombing a wedding and bombing an arms depot. I think we can all recognize that, I hope. And if we conflate the two, it becomes impossible to make meaningful criticisms because everything becomes everything and nothing becomes nothing. An example of this was, do you guys remember that TikTok from a person who claimed that she worked on Kamala Harris's campaign team? Just some young woman. And she was like, yeah, I worked in the campaign team, and she was doing a little dance. You remember this? Now, I may not like Kamala Harris. There were people in that Twitter thread, lots of them, calling her a war criminal. What the fuck do lefties think war criminal means? What exactly? What does that mean? I'm not kidding. There were thousands of them. Like, wow, grew up so great, now you're a war criminal. Like, what do they think that means? Like, war criminal is when you work on a Democrat's campaign team. Like, everything is a war. Again, I want to be really, really clear. Leftists, if you call everything a war crime, nothing is a war crime. If you call everyone a war criminal, nothing is a war criminal. And I see lefties abuse the term war criminal all the time, by the way. War crimes are when you commit a war crime. And unless there was something in that Twitter thread that I really missed, I do not think that woman committed a war crime. To my knowledge, I suppose it's always possible. So, that's my yelling at lefties out of the way. Are we done? Are we done? Are we done? Okay. Whew. I'm a big advocate for understanding the totality of these issues because I think it helps us draw a good conclusion, a good action plan. What is this from chat? Why are they bombing Vosh? Please explain. I don't understand the teams in this metagame. Sure. Let me find a map of the Middle East. This is going to be a we're going to be playing it a little hard and fast with our geography lesson here, but, you know, I think we'll... Hold on. Just a moment. Okay, let me open this. Can I open this in Paint? Why is this map? No. Why is this map on Twitter? Not Twitter, sorry, on Google Image Search in GIF format? What is it with people and the way they save their files? People will save anything as anything these days. They'll save any file type as any file type. They'll fake PNGs with the little checkerboard shit in the background. What are these people doing, honestly? That's a war crime right there. GIF has less compression. I don't care. Fuck you. As we were saying. This, that's not, no, there we go. This is what some people call the Middle East. I'm still not entirely sure why it's called that, but that's what it's called. And this is a country called Iraq. Pretty cool, huh? This is a country called Syria. Syria's omega fucked right now. Whew! A lot of stuff going on in Syria at the moment. And there's a helicopter overhead. Probably Biden silencing me for the scathing criticism that I'm about to levy. So let's make sure we understand this totally well, okay? So Syria is what we call omega fucked. There are like 46 competing interests that are fighting over territory here. Our boys are the fucking Rahavans. And I believe about this area, my geography is terrible. I just read this shit. Don't hurt me. They are essentially like an anarchist group, and they were getting pushed in by Turkey and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, Syria doesn't exactly have what we might call a robust domestic police force. So there are a lot of insurgents and military groups within Syria that are aligned with a bunch of different groups. Now, America, I'm going to draw some American red dots in here, has presence in Iraq. We have for a long time. Ostensibly, we're allies with the Iraqi government, the new Iraqi government. We kind of pushed in place there, you know, after Saddam. But even that relationship has been strained lately on account of, among other things, the attack that Trump authorized on Soleimani, where we, no shit, fucking missile striked Soleimani in an Iraqi airport. Imagine if America had a criminal or like a bad guy here in our country and the UK missile striked LAX to kill him. Just absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. You know, unbelievable. That was for sure a war crime though, right? I don't think that took place in the purview of a war. I'm not sure. Well, whatever the case is, we're losing the plot right here, okay? Stop. American presence in Iraq, okay? We got people, we got contractors, we got soldiers, and we got mercenaries there, okay? Now, Iran doesn't like us, and we don't like Iran, but we can't do a direct war with Iran for a wide variety of reasons. It would be very bad for us and for them, okay? And Iran knows that if they go ahead fucking boots on the ground marching into Iraq, because they don't like Iraq that much either, that would also be bad for them because it would justify a coalition strike on their country. So instead, Iran funnels money into militia groups all around the Middle East. Soleimani was very good at doing this, including some in Syria. And some of those in Syria rocket striked Americans and coalition forces in Iraq. And then, in response, Biden authorized a missile strike against an arms depot controlled by one of these militia groups and killed 22 people. The 22 people that were killed were combatants, to the best of our knowledge. We are not talking about like civilians or contractors. We're talking about militia groups who have been radicalized and funded, you know, in part of a campaign against American military interventionism. Which, hey, not a big fan of American military interventionism myself. What do we do about that? Well, I'll tell you what we don't do. Okay? I'll tell you what we don't do. This. We don't do this. We have been in the Middle East, broadly, for like 2 decades now. We have been there for a long time. We have broken previous records that our country has held on long-term military occupation in foreign countries. President after president has promised a removal of our forces from Iraq and from Afghanistan and areas around. And it doesn't happen. It keeps not happening. Troop numbers decrease slightly, and then troop numbers increase. Again, we lose troops there, but then we put mercenaries in their place. And there is a reason for that. The reason is because America is not the only country that has an interest in this region. There are other powers, other countries, other resources that would be capable of seizing power in our absence. But that does not mean we can draw out an interminable presence in these countries. We cannot continue to squat in the Middle East like helicopter parents, perpetually involving ourselves in their affairs. And there's a very, very clear reason for this, okay? As long as America is present in these countries, these attacks will never stop. Ever. Our presence in the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, it doesn't matter. Any presence in the Middle East beyond embassies and military bases in relatively safe zones. Our presence in the Middle East guarantees with absolute certainty violence and death and bloodshed. Because as long as we are there, there will be states and terrorist groups and militia groups that will send men to die to get us out. And who could blame them? America and the Western powers that be have wreaked unfathomable damage to this part of the world and have been for a very long time, since we drew the borders. And constantly we have interfered. We interfere through war. We do it, the deposition of leaders. We do it through this is a very complicated subject, but our continued support of Israel in the Middle East is also a very destabilizing factor in that region. We constantly involve ourselves in this part of the world, and all it has begotten, all it has produced is blood. The Middle East right now is no more stable than it was 20 years ago. ISIS was on us. ISIS came about because all of the dejected young men who lived in the bombed out ruins of the wasteland we created were subjected to similar radicalizing forces that alt-righters over here in the West get subjected to. We know what ISIS propaganda looks like. And you know what? I don't blame them for being upset. I blame them for how they handle their upsetness. I blame them real hard. Fucking death cult over there. But are you really surprised that you're going to create terrorist groups by just ruining swaths of land, decimating them, destroying their economy, and then leaving them with what? The petty shadow governments that we can afford to prop up over there? Of course this shit's gonna happen. You think ISIS is the beginning? If ISIS dies, and I mean fully dies, the whole thing, the dream of the caliphate, if it all goes to shit, there will be another one in 2 years. There will be another one in 2 years. These are not problems that we can fix through occupation. There is exactly one way of fixing this problem, this Middle East problem. How long have leaders in America been saying they're cautiously optimistic about the state of the Middle East? I saw a political cartoon about that. I don't know if it was the New Yorker or something, but I swear to God, it must have been 30 or 40 years old. And it was something like presidential administration after presidential administration after presidential administration, cautiously optimistic about the state of the Middle East. How long are we going to do this? 2040, 2050, 2060? The rest of the world, we have bullet trains and monorails, waves crash against the shores of the Philippines as climate change raises the sea level, and all the while we're still in Afghanistan and Iraq, all the while we're still posturing with Iran. There is one solution. We prop up their governments. Not us. We don't do it. We don't keep troops in there. But we provide the government of Iraq, the state, the resources necessary to prop themselves up. Our presence there is the greatest destabilizing factor. And I know what some of you are saying and thinking. You're saying and thinking this was just retaliation. They killed a civilian contractor with a rocket strike. They injured an American serviceman. They injured coalition personnel. We were justified in our retaliation. And you know what? There is actually debate in the legal community as to whether or not that airstrike was a violation of international law, because that's determined by a wide number of factors: the likelihood of retaliation, the degree to which the retaliatory strike was a proportionate response. There's a lot that goes into that. I read up on some of it before stream. I was expecting a hard yes or no answer, but I can't give it to you. There's discourse. But I'm not interested here in legality. The law allows great leeway for injustice. And you know what? Let's say, I'll even take the military-industrial complex aside on this. Let's for the sake of argument, okay? Let's say it was a justified retaliation. Let's say it was a completely legitimate. They killed only militants. They attacked an arms depot. I mean, they didn't kill any kids, as far as we know. How does that work? Does that make it good? Does that make it bad? I'll tell you this much. We're perpetuating the problem. Forever. Maybe. This is an ongoing conflict. It's been going on for decades. But we're in their part of the world. Sure, you can send a retaliatory missile strike. Maybe you only kill militants. Maybe you only kill evil men. Wonderful. But they'll bomb you again. They'll find another rocket. They'll find a way. They'll find an IED. They'll find a way to kill more American servicemen. They'll kill more civilian contractors. And then what are you going to do? Are you going to airstrike again? Are you going to create more widows? Are you going to create more fatherless children who are going to grow up hating the United States? There is no solution to this that involves retaliation. Retaliation is not the way we fix this problem. So to me, is this airstrike justified? I don't even care. To me, that's not even the real question here. The question is whether we have our eyes on the prize. The question is whether or not we're acknowledging the fact that whether or not this airstrike was justified is at best an auxiliary question. It is tangential. It is secondary. It is to the side. Nothing that is happening in the Middle East is just. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people have died. In Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, it's a part of ISIS, which only came about because of us. Millions of people have died. What here is justice? Where is the justice? The justice is us pulling out. Here's what we do. It's not easy, but it's what we need to do. Because if you don't do this, you will be committed for all time to an interminable back and forth of justified military aggression versus terrorist attack on U.S. forces. That will be the rest of American history right there. Forever. A constant back and forth. And every 6 months, Americans get to go, woo, we blew up another arms depot. And then the next 3 months are them attacking us. And we go back and forth and back and forth. People die, nothing gets solved. Here's what we do. Simple as this. We do everything in our power to remove our presence from the Middle East. The only part of the Middle East I was okay with Americans being involved in was us propping up Rojava because there was a lot to that, okay? But in Iraq and Afghanistan, we pull out and we pay into these countries to the greatest possible extent, because I don't want Iraq and Afghanistan to just fall apart when we leave. And there's a very real threat, by the way. There's a very, very, very real threat, by the way, of that happening. That's a legitimate threat. You don't want to create a power vacuum. If you create a power vacuum, then things get worse than they were before, and things, they don't improve, okay? You remove yourself and you stabilize these governments, or you provide arms and you provide service and you provide money. Oh, you all can hear that beeping? Should I close the... Oh, okay. Oh. And you provide money to their service forces. You try to maybe form a coalition defense force within the Middle East. That's something I'd be interested in seeing. I know there's a lot of conflict in that region, but maybe some sort of pan-Middle Eastern solution. Bosh, I swear we've been doing that. We've been trying to do that, and it's not working. So we need to try harder, or we need to leave. The complexities of this are incredibly nuanced, so I'm going to make a promise to you guys, okay? I am going to do some research, and I am going to come up with a Middle East solution to the best of my knowledge and my abilities. I want to see what money we put in to these countries. I want to see where it goes. I want to see how it's used. I want to see the available service personnel of the Iraqi government. I want to see anything that can be done, anything and everything, any amount of money, any amount of resources necessary. Because there is no ceiling to how much money we should be willing to spend to fix this problem. Are you literally suggesting you're going to solve the Middle East? What, you think I can do all this? No, I want to be able to confidently suggest a solution. Because I believe there is one. I do. I refuse to succumb to this pathetic, dejected belief that there's nothing that can be done about this problem we created in large part. I sincerely believe that if with an appropriately intelligent and well-cultivated plan executed by good personnel, by good elected officials, it would be possible to remove ourselves from the Middle East, which would prevent further radicalization and prevent further military action in a way that stabilizes the governments that we leave behind and prevents a power vacuum. I believe it. And if I do a bunch of research and I think and I find that that can't be done, that it's not possible, that no matter how much money we spend right now, the timetable just will not work, it cannot happen, then I will make that segment anyway, and I will eat my hat. Allegorically, I will not eat a hat, but I will say I was wrong. I can't think of a solution. And I'll own that. I'll own that. When I talk to leftists, I'll say it too. I'll talk to lefties and I'll say, yeah, no, I legitimately don't think that this, like, anti-war posturing is doing us any good. I don't. I think that we have to stay involved interminably in the Middle East. I don't want to believe that. I don't believe that right now. But I'll own that if that ends up being what the research finds. Does that make sense? Eyes on the prize, people. It's not about what is or is not legitimate or justified, what is or is not a good retaliation. It all comes down to whether or not we can fix the problem for good. We're not talking Band-Aid solutions. We're talking, I want the Middle East, not just Dubai or Israel. I want the entirety of the Middle East to be, when I die, as wealthy and vibrant a nation they could be with their size and population. I want people to think of the Middle East as the new Scandinavia, with vibrant social democracies, robust civil rights, low crime rates. I want a Middle East where when we get news about death happening within the borders of Afghanistan, it's shocking. I want a Middle East where Iraq and Iran just dislike each other rather than constantly posture warfare with each other. See if we can fix that in the line. That's what I want. Vosh, most online lefties would call you a neoliberal warmonger for supporting aid to the Middle East. Idiots. What do they think's going to happen if they just let these countries plummet, collapse on themselves when they leave? They'll be taken over by ISIS, or worse. You think ISIS is the worst it can get? I think you would, wouldn't it? But no, no. If we pulled out, if we allowed these countries to destabilize, you know what would happen within 10 years? Guaranteed. You know what would happen within 10 years? I bet you more than anything. America pulls out with no exit strategy, no long-term plan for supporting these countries. These countries fail, and they turn into, I mean, we're talking Cambodia level. We're talking fields of corpses. China will come in with boots on the ground and fix their problems, and they'll be Chinese vassal states for the next century. Almost guaranteed that's what happens with a power vacuum. Tankies would like that? Yeah, I'm sure. Whilst you're completely ignoring religious fundamentalist movements that are not motivated by U.S. intervention, but by cringe tradition, the countries will always be fucked. I say we have a Kraut fan. No. This is in a low IQ position. The only thing that's always fucked here is your cognitive processes. The idea that people are just naturally gravitating towards extremism and, oh, the military intervention, the bombing, the dead families, that's just a coincidence. It's because of the Book of Islam. No. Muslims in America are well integrated and generally moderate. There's nothing wrong with Islam, at least no more so than any other major religion, no more so than Christian. By the way, you know it's Christianity that's destroying the world right now, right? Christians right here who operate the American government are the ones who are leading the flagship towards climate disaster. They are the ones who are steering this planet into... The only difference is that Christians as a whole in America are wealthy and powerful enough that they can do damage without having to rely on arms sales, that they can do damage without having to rely on individually putting themselves in harm's way. You can do 1,000,000 times more damage to the world in a suit behind a desk than you ever could holding an AK-47 assembling an IED while an American van rolls around the next mountain pass. Infinitely more damage. No. All problems can be fixed. The problem is an issue between eternal religious fundamentalism. You're unbelievably ignorant about the topic. It's amazing. Wow. It's okay. You know what? I guess we're going to throw this out there too. Wow. Okay. Guys, what did Iran look like in the 1950s? Do we want to find some picture here? Hold on. Let's take a look. Wow. Now that's an interesting. Wow, geez. This looks like an American university. I mean, now that was literally only in Kabul and major cities. Yeah, no shit. Go to American backwoods and see what it looks like there. You know why things changed? It's not because they all suddenly read the Quran. It's because material conditions changed the people in power and changed the things that people were afraid of. Okay? People don't just read the Quran and then their brain rewires and they're suddenly radical extremists. Material conditions dictate people's degrees of extremism. Socioeconomic conditions, not just family wealth, because I'm pretty sure terrorist groups tend to have a lot of people from upper middle class families, but social conditions like imperialism. I mean, look at what the Native Americans did after we invaded the American continent. There are actually really interesting books on how their religious and military tendencies changed after we arrived. And a lot of colonizers, they thought they were just naturally savage people, the Native Americans. When in reality, as it turns out, being invaded by foreign powers, having your democratic leaders disposed, having your neighboring countries fall apart and crumble into a collection of terrorist groups, that actually fucks you up a little bit. There are people in chat right now who are acting as though I'm the one taking a reductionist position when their argument is just Islam bad. You people are the reason why we can't fix these problems. You realize that, right? There is another world, a world where very slight differences were made, where Western Europe and America are thriving Western Islamic countries, and there is a shitbed Christian fundamentalist majority in the Middle East. There is absolutely no reason why that world could not exist. And people in that world would be saying that Christianity is just naturally violent, that it's the religious extremism. God, look at the text of their book. No, 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 no. No. If you fix conditions, you fix problems. So let's fix conditions. And by the way, none of what I've said discounts any of the internal religious conflicts in the Middle East. Do you think those religious conflicts may have been exacerbated by Western imperialism? By us drawing borders? By us depriving them of resources? By us funneling money into insurgent groups? By us deposing their leaders? Do you think any of that might have had an effect? I encourage all of you to adopt what I was taught is called the sociological imagination, to reject essentialist explanations for complex issues, like Islam just makes you radical, and instead think about the ways in which people are built by their environments. What about the colonial borders in the Middle East? Yeah, you mean when Western powers drew lines in the sand and forced tribes together that didn't have anything in common and previously hated each other, but now they were forced to be a state? Yep, we did that in Africa too. Led to a lot of problems down the line, a lot of long-standing resentment. Do you think there might be a reason? You know, if I recall... Wait, hold on. Vosh, Islam is far more restrictive and totalitarian. Christianity doesn't require things like head coverings. Christianity doesn't let you wear mixed fabrics. The only reason why Islam expresses itself in a more fundamentalist way is because it comes from socioeconomically fucked parts of the world. Jesus, have you read the Bible? There's tons of stupid shit in there. And if Christians there are Christians who lived in fuck parts of the world. There are Christian minorities in parts of the Middle East. And yeah, you know what? They don't act like our Christians. They're a little bit more radical. Jesus. The fuck is wrong with you people today? I don't know why everyone is so insistent on it's Islam. Jesus Christ. Be willing to bet none of you are even slightly familiar with any of the tenets of the Quran, which I am, by the way, not. I don't even know why we're having this conversation on religious fundamentalism, when we know religious fundamentalism stems from radicalization. People from the Middle East are literally telling you the internal conflicts we came from, it's so upsetting. Yeah, that's not an argument. Yeah, you think if you ask somebody in Iran, yeah, I bet they'll tell you that the problems in their part of the world come from certain thing. And if you ask a person in Iraq or Afghanistan, they'll tell you something else, okay? Yeah, people are beholden to the material conditions that they live in. But if you ask a scholar who studies the Middle East, or if you ask, you know, people who are educated enough to rise above the propaganda inherent to living in a country with an invested interest, you might find different answers. All right. All right, we can't. I don't know why all the Sam Harrisites are here in chat, but we'll do this later. Women weren't allowed to drive cars without their husband's consent here in Germany till the 60s, and rape in marriage wasn't outlawed until 1998 here in Germany. Yeah, here in America it was till like the 1970s that women could open bank accounts on their own. For fuck's sake, we had 100 years war between Catholics in France and Protestants of the Church of England. Like, Jesus. Yeah, we're still fighting for abortion. I don't know how anyone can see how Christians behave themselves in the United States of America and then go to, like, sneer at Islam in the Middle East.